Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's 6 o'clock. Welcome to our regular Sunday meeting. And I'm so grateful to everyone who's contributed so far in these regular Sunday meetings, because we are making good progress using sound knowledge and also multidisciplinary contributions. So I think there's always a good reason that we are continuing with this so far. So we are actually Sri Lankans for Sri Lankans, and we were discussing how to get our Sri Lanka back on track some time ago, and then we were planning and kind of identified three main areas that will need attention: how to reduce wastage of public money, and we've identified corruption as a major problem there, and how to increase productivity. And we've identified energy and education as key things that we want to promote, and research and innovation. We haven't even touched on that. And we need research and innovation on Sri Lankan way for Sri Lankan solutions. Then whilst we're doing that, we suddenly came into this situation on 12th of April, where the country was basically declared bankrupt with a debt of 51 billion US dollars. There's a need for us to take collective action in a disaster situation like this, just like a sinking ship. We can't think about individual reasons. We have to rescue the ship for us to be rescued from other problems as well. So there is a real need for us to work to go together. Now, 21 days gone from that time, and see what has happened. So the rescue and recovery of Sri Lanka from its current problems is a long-term issue, but now resuscitation from this acute situation is urgent and urgent and urgent. Since 12th of April, major shift has taken place in Sri Lanka, with protests all over the place and continuously happening. And the main theme or main message of all of them is the leadership family should be out. What is important on these issues is that these are natural people's reactions, non-divisional, everyone was participating, apolitical, democratic, and also reflects the liberal preposition of the public. And it's largely non-violent. So these are key things in these protests that we need to look at. Why have people started protesting? Because of the governance issues. There's been a deficiency in essential foods. There's virtually no essential medicines. The inflation has skyrocketed, and the earnings cannot match the expenses and cannot maintain life. Fuel-wise, there's no power, people in the dark. There was no work, jobs and salaries were threatened, and there's virtually no transport. So obviously people have different reasons and they all are affected, and that's why they are protesting. Economy here was the main issue, and it was basically a leaking bucket because of huge wastage, and most of that is corruption related. Loans has been the theme of the government for years and years and years, not just the current one, the previous ones as well. And now it's virtually drying out. People abroad, expatriates, are trying to get donations and make foreign remittances to patch the needs, but unfortunately, that's very little considering the amount of wastage we have. So in this kind of situation, just think naturally as to how a caring governance should handle this. If the governance is actually caring, how should they handle this? First of all, if you're sinking like a ship, we have to find the root cause as soon as possible. And nothing so far has been done, not even a committee. We have committees appointed for everything, but not for this one. Then we have to curtail colossal corruption. Nothing but exaggerated instead. fix it as much as possible. So if there's a leak into the ship, we got to fix it. So we got to fix it as much as possible. What was done was to send a team to IMF asking for more loans. But we know the loans are also the root cause of the current problem. And we've been printing money again and again and again, huge amounts of money. And situation is designed to get worse because of that as well. So what can the governance do to take immediate measure to rectify the situation? Minimize public spending. For example, recall the foreign missions that are not really important, and then maybe, reduce the ministerial portfolios, mega portfolios where there's no money for us to maintain such ministries. Minimize the wastage. There are lots of things that we can do to minimize wastage. Nothing's been done. And we also need safety nets to prevent the vulnerable becoming victims. Now, this is an IMF requirement and nothing's being done. Then we need to take long-term measures to recover, like increase productivity, nothing in that direction. Rectify the power issue, nothing in that direction. So far, the outcome is bleak because we are not getting there. So last week, I managed to kind of publish the summary of what we have thought so far that will be useful for the country. So I've just summarized a little bit about that. Support going to the IMF because that's the lowest interest loans, and each dollar has to be accounted for. So it will be good, put to good use without actually being wasted or corrupted. Then the parliament already has a 2/3 majority, and they can use it to abolish the presidential system. It doesn't mean you check the current president out. It means at least they can legally abolish the system. Reduce wastage, say, as I talked to you, call back unnecessary foreign missions, cancel mega ministerial portfolios, and stop new white elephant projects. Then make the central bank and civil administration independent, so it's not led by parachuted top officials who doesn't know the job. Support renewable energy generation at home level. And also not to sell national asset at cheap price, instead promote private-public partnerships. So our assets will be used to generate public money. So why is our parliament has not done anything good for us so far? Is it ignorant, or is it negligent, or is it purposeful? Or are they working pro who? Is it public? Or are they working pro politicians? Or are they working ex-territorial force to support that? So we don't know, but what we know is there are the reds, there are the blues, there are the maroons, there are the greens, then there are the yellows, then there are public criminal convicts in there. Then there are national MPs who are called backdoor entrances, 13% of them. Then there are jumping fish who jump from one to the other, have no real policy. Then there are ethnic only groups who only support a particular ethnic group, nothing else. Then there are others. So we got huge amount of division in there. So they all are playing divisional politics and try to claim a pound of flesh from each other and not really looking after the country. And the president is appointed by votes, more than 50% of the votes of the whole country. And he's expected to serve all equally. But what is happening is he is biased. So divisional politics was our downfall. And this is actually today in the papers, I saw this, which was again saying the similar thing, the parliamentary system, the womb of racism, separatism, and civil war, portal for Lanka's fall. So this is another topic that we should discuss in the future. Maybe you all can contribute, somebody can come forward and talk about how to get our parliamentary system cleaned up and have legislation so that it will function in a more liberal, democratic manner. So let's come back to our bankruptcy situation. So we need collective action 21 days gone. But since that declaration, look at this. The Corp tells Sri Lankan Airlines to delay procurement aircraft. So they ordered more aircraft. And the Sri Lankan Airlines has been always at a loss, and it was supported by public money. And Sri Lankan Airlines, the unexpected explanation to the Corp. So they went to the Corp and they told Corp the board was not aware that the Sri Lanka was bankrupt. That's the explanation they gave. More political corruption. See this one. There was a hurry to award the Central Expressway project for Sri Lanka. Why? More political corruption. Then this one, China to offer another loan to settle existing one. Say 1% interest may go up to 8% interest. Why? Again, more political corruption. So protests and strikes, unfortunately, is erupting and has erupted, and it's huge. It's actually a double-edged sword. Now, this is what we were going to focus on shortly. So the reasons there is why we want to discuss is the current government is neither trusted locally nor internationally. Now, this actually hampers Sri Lanka obtaining large-scale financial assistance that is urgently required. So the protests and crowds are the only language, unfortunately, our politicians understand. There's no point doing professional advice. There's no point writing professional letters to the papers. There's no point meeting. Nothing of that has no value. The protests and crowds are the ones that actually makes the politicians listen in Sri Lanka. So unfortunately, protests need to be balanced to not to damage our public, but achieve the objective. So you can see a double-edged sword, and then you have an enemy, you wave it around, it damages the enemy, and also wave the other way, it will damage us as well. So whatever the damage that happens in relation to the public earnings, in relation to the work patterns, in relation to public property damage, all that has to be paid by the friend, that means us, the public. So whatever the damage that happens from protests will also be into our account, not our rulers. So this is why you need to be balanced in relation to the protests. So basically, it should not be excessive in the sense so it does not paralyze the country. Because if the country is paralyzed, there'll be no work and there'll be no income. And then that we'll get into a worse situation. It should be intermittent maybe to preserve some productivity so that we also go to work, and it's intermittent. Especially has to be non-violent because that will give an opening for major shift in the way it's been handled. Then independently managed by relevant groups. Now the political groups are trying to get in, and they will say, I saw one person was telling that the current protests are too blunt, and therefore we need to sharpen it. So that's the kind of ideas that's coming through various groups. Their agendas may be different, but they also may be at this particular time supporting the recovery of the country. So we can't really interpret, but that's the way it is. So then there'll be leaders who are looking to get credit. I mean, so there are leaders who wait until somebody plants something and then come up shouting, okay, we want the beans because they knew it's been planted. So when the plants come up and they say we got beans because we were shouting, not because somebody planted it. So that's why. So there are leaders who are looking for get credit. This happened very well. I saw it in my own eyes in tsunami when people brought various donations to the south. They were hijacked by others with various colors, and they kind of distributed saying it's their donations. So maybe it's important things to keep all 2 to 5 politicians out of this protest, but naturally they will come in. So act with care and understanding and exercise utmost restraint when continuing with this, because it will only damage us if it's go out of control. One important thing why we need to be aware of it is that these blue countries, you can see, are actually the dictatorship countries in 2022. And China, Russia is the biggest ones in our area. And they are autocrats. what we don't want is for Sri Lanka to become another Myanmar, where there'll be high impact on people. So today's speaker is Mervyn Silva, followed by, we have another speaker I will announce shortly. And he's an IT expert who is a graduate of NHS Beacon Leadership Academy for Ethnic Minorities. He works in Yorkshire, been there for 40 years, and work in IT industry. So I'm going to invite him to present his talk. So I'll stop.
Can you see my screen now?
Great, very good, thank you.
Right, what I want to, there is a presenter screen that I was looking for where I had my script. It's hidden behind the Zoom at the moment. Full screen, that might help, that's right. Okay, I'm getting there now, got it. Okay, right, okay. Let me go back. Thank you for that. Sorry about the slight delay in getting started. I used the word aragale, which is the popular term being bandied around and people understand in the country. So even with my little narrative last week, I described it as a possible unique opportunity for the country to reset, change its course, reset its future direction for Sri Lanka that we haven't managed to achieve since the independence. So for a small country like Sri Lanka, it had had more than its fair share of disasters, tragedies, and suffering during its 74 years plus since the independence. Now, compared to more successful nations, Sri Lankans in the past have not shown much ability to reflect on these things and learn from them, thereby put in place any measures to prevent such things from happening again and again. Now, this has resulted in the nation falling into the same pit that they fell at night during the daylight. Like they say in Single, yeah, which is not very nice, not very smart. And one main example of this is that the nation keeps electing the same people, same crooks back into the parliament again and again, expecting them to behave differently and do better next time. And which is one of the, which is the prime cause for the situation we are in today. Now, when last week I briefly mentioned the term disruptor, which many of you are familiar with. Disruptions or disruptors are forced upon society. People don't embrace them willingly. They are not invited or welcome, and we have no choice of the matter. But the main thing is disruptors force change, challenge the status quo, and make people to think and act differently. Now, this is one of those situations. Unlike in the past, faced with this particular crisis, the disruption, unlike in the history, the response to this disruptor is led by young people, although it had the support of all sectors of the society, young and old, male and female, all ethnicities, all religions, able and disabled. And that has brought together the nation more than ever before. That is the current situation. So I don't want to repeat a lot of those. Jewel already introduced me. Yes, I have lived in the UK for over 40 years, worked in the IT industry most of my adult life, and started off life as a teacher with a special interest in personal effectiveness training. Therefore, spent quite a bit of time with this, as well as looking at Sri Lanka. I have also been the General Secretary of the APSL, President, and currently I lead the scholarship scheme, which is helping gifted children in Sri Lanka from needy families. So moving on, what equips me, what qualifies me to speak to you on this matter? Am I an expert? No, this is not physics, this is not science, what is happening in the country. Therefore, it's not the academic qualifications that I can bring into this, it's very much the reality. Although I have been out of the country for 40 years, I have continued to engage with the people, starting with my own family, relatives, and friends, and society at large, originally through travels and letters, and with the development of technology from email to nowadays instantly with the latest technology, social media, internet, and having a well-wisher with very high hopes for the nation and seeing the full potential the nation has, which has gone unrealized up to now. And living here, like many of my colleagues, we have access to a wealth of unrestricted information and knowledge, examples of good practice, and even experience of success that we could share. And we have the advantage of being that bit far, having a helicopter view of what is happening in Sri Lanka, which may not be available to the young people on the ground, battling it out with all the needs and deprivations and pressure. Therefore, a bit of sanity, some of that might be useful. So I see, along with my colleagues, myself as one of those well-wishing, caring elder, prepared to give a helping hand, to support and encourage, and give a bit of feedback. And along with a lot of other people who support this, because what is taking place is not party political, not biased, linked to any religion or race. And there's very much a nation in crisis looking for a way out of it and to carve out a brighter future for itself. So I feel we all have a role to play. We can do something. Now, the reason I'm taking liberty to introduce the APSL, although I have put in very clearly the views expressed during the presentation are strictly mine, because APSL is a neutral, non-political, non-partisan organization, but I had to share this vision, which I had a big hand in authoring originally many years ago. The APSL has this vision of a very peaceful, just and prosperous Sri Lanka, with all its citizens living in harmony and dignity with one another, where diversity is valued, cherished, and celebrated. All the nation's children get the best opportunity in life to realize their full potential. And I like to underline the next one: country's natural resources, its beauty, cultural heritage, benefits all its citizens, and it's enjoyed by all and cherished and looked after for the benefit of the future generations to come. So that is our vision for the country. And the Sri Lankan professionals, renowned for their knowledge, their skills and hard work, excelled nationally and internationally, making the best of their knowledge and protect and using those to protect and enrich the nation. And the APSL has been in the business of developing professionalism among its members in the UK and projecting a positive image of Sri Lanka in the UK, promoting cultural relations. So that's, I'm bringing that in just as a bit of a compliment to put into context what I'm talking about. But I want to get APSL out of that because this is very much what I want to share. And what people like us can do, if we can keep an eye on the horizon as to what is going on. Look out for danger signs. I already heard, Chula, some of those being mentioned, and potential traps the young people out there in the struggle should not fall into, play into other people's hands. And we can make available to the young people the knowledge and experience we have, and where possible, work as a watchtower, a compass to provide direction, support, and encouragement. Right. Let's move on. I have sort of already said this before. Now, compared to previous struggles we have had, whether it's the JVP or LTT or many other struggles, rebellions, whatever you call it, this one is unique. It's a desperate cry by the long-suffering population, a nation that have had enough, being repeatedly hammered, being repeatedly let down by their rulers, and they are saying enough is enough. And the present reality is unbearable. and they see their future for them and their children bleak. And to have the support of all the different sectors, as I mentioned, and also it's visible there's no obvious leader, political parties not involved, which is good. And the key thing is the absence of violence, despite many attempts to provoke and not being, falling for that. I want to add another little thing. I'm a Christian, therefore I would bring in, and this is the second occasion in my adult life, in my life, that the Christian church has ever come out onto the streets or had any inklings of politics. First one was in the early 1960s when the schools were nationalized. This time around, it is demanding justice for the Easter Sunday bombing, and it has developed. And the main thing has been vocal, very outspoken, very clear, but peaceful and dignified. Who impacts whom we don't know, but that seems to have set the tone and had a moderating influence on the nation. And another unique feature within this protest is the intercommunal harmony, display of, of unity. When the Ramadan, at the end of Ramadan, when the fast was broken, the communities came together to celebrate. And there have been examples of Buddhist monks being given alms by other religions and Catholic nuns being in serving them. And on Maundy Thursday, just before the Easter Sunday, the traditional washing of feet happened at Goldface, where the Christians, priests and nuns were washing the feet of people out there, regardless of religion, following the example of Jesus. One who wants to be the leader has to be the servant among them. And one of the other things I saw was when the government was getting ready to fight, the army was about to fire tear gas at the protesters, nuns forming a ring around them so that they were discouraged from firing tear gas as a protecting shield. I thought that was remarkable, and that's an example. So regardless of all that, every effort to belittle it, brush it aside as another group of disgruntled young people, or they will grow out of it, or other ways to disrupt it, it has been persistent. It carries on, much to the frustration of the authorities, people in charge. Now, as they say, when you fight in a battle, there's good chance of success if you know your enemies. Now, if the past is a reliable guide to the future, the legacy we see is this particular family is keen to come to power, but once in power is near impossible to shift, which is the main cause of frustration, as though it's an addiction. Nepotism and absence of a moral compass, and the approach to divide and rule based on religion, race, and corrupt, and they have an amazing ability to corrupt anyone they touch, anyone they deal with. It's a corroding influence of society. And going by the track record, there are many examples to bring in. No hesitation to use violence to intimidate and repress and put people down. And Chula mentioned this a few weeks ago, using power of his private personal gain. And patriotism, religion has been used very successfully for, again, to mislead, divide, and conquer. People who claim to be the defender, the patriot of the nation, have been the biggest sellers of the nation and national assets. So as the picture says, people have been fooled. And the Bible says, by their fruit you shall know them. Moving on. Now, this is the famous force field theory. The Argalia is trying to force a change, move things forward, brush aside the blocks that are in the way, but what is holding it back? So if you know the green and the reds, you have a better understanding. While this is not comprehensive, this may be a pointer for people to reflect and add ideas onto. If the green were the younger people, the older people, people who are looking for peace, justice, truth, honesty, good governance, and brighter future for the children who are protesting to push this blockade, the wall down. But what is holding back are the people who have a lot to lose, starting from the family, the people in the parliament who have benefited a great deal out of it, and also not all the forces, but certain elements in the forces, armed forces, police, judiciary, wherever it is, who have had a hand in bringing them to power, who have benefited a great deal. Could be in the civil service, it could be in the foreign service. Again, people who have been favored, who have had benefited from this party in power. And also, without forgetting, lots and lots of businesses, particularly corrupt ones, who have funded the campaigns and brought them into power nationally, locally, who have a lot to lose by this party not being in power. So those are the ones who are holding this from the opposite side, not allowing this wall to fall. So top bit, you might say as well, military power, parliament, etc. But don't forget at the ground level, village level, there are also people, businesses who have reaped great benefits over the years from this arrangement, who are, first of all, don't want to forfeit the good life they have had, and also who are quite worried, frightened that they may be brought to books, held to account if this their patrons fall. So therefore, explicitly or implicitly, obviously or not so obviously, they will be supporting to keep this force in power. So be aware of that. They could be around you. They, yeah, and be smart about it. The next thing is why this particular, you already know this, I don't need to go into a lot of detail. When all the experts kept advising the government at the beginning of pandemic to seek IMF help, and there was a great deal of reluctance. There were all sorts of homegrown solutions being bandied around. But some of the reasons being, one of the main one being the Chinese government, again, we mentioned about the dictatorships who do things in a certain way, and Sri Lanka was very much under pressure, under direction, both rewards and threats to keep it that way. One of the rewards were financial, bribes, commissions. Threats were, well, if you don't support us, we won't support you in the UN Human Rights Council, Yeah, so we have a lot to protect. Therefore, we need these big brothers to back us. So that was another pressure that came. Now, another reason was IMF conditions for assistance, rule of law, human rights, transparency, no commission, and having to admit all the misdemeanors, all the things that have been done underhand, so that they would come to light. That was part of that. And contrary to what one is led to believe, the IMF negotiation, you can't come home with a bag of money. They take a lot of time. So while various politicians say, oh, the first tranche of money will arrive into 4 weeks' time, 2 weeks' time, it won't happen until some of the key conditions are met. So in the current state of play in Sri Lanka, you could not, although IMF is the available source of help, it won't be forthcoming in a hurry until the ground situation is stabilized. So the nation is crying out in despair, but parliamentarians, for some reason, either deaf or blind, they continue to play musical chairs and don't seem to represent the people that brought them to power. In the meantime, China has yet again promised huge support and help, come to the rescue, but watch out, partly because China also has a lot to lose. They have a lot to protect by way of airports, seaports, and port cities and all that. So they are quite concerned because Sri Lanka has become the darling, one of the pearls in the Belt and Road Initiative of China, which has earmarked 70 countries, particularly in the developing countries, right up to Europe along the way, that they want to invest and develop, acquire, so that the old Silk Route going back almost 2,000 years, and the sea routes, the European empires culminating by the British setup. So, China feels it's their turn and they want to do it in the 21st century, and they have a different way of going about by putting a lot of money in and pretty much making those countries indebted, and we have fallen into it big time. Now, moving on quickly, use the word Velvet Revolution versus Arab Revolution. Now, what is Velvet Revolution? It is one of those few revolutions that actually was successful, an uprising that was successful. Back in May 2018, in Armenia, there was a people's movement called Velvet Revolution that swept out the corrupt tyrant and restored democracy. If I can pronounce his name right, Serge Sargsyan is Armenia's leader from 2008, was overthrown in 2018. Sargsyan and his clique robbed the country. He rigged the elections in 2008 election, crushed the protest, and shot 10 people dead. He served the limit of 2 presidential terms, then made himself prime minister, and then with the vote of a laptop parliament, changed the constitution to secure absolute power. A bit like Putin, you could say. But fortunately for the people, the uprising was successful. They stood the time, and in 2018 May, they managed to get rid of him and replace him with the democratic leader, that is, yeah. So there has been this color revolution, but because of foreign manipulations, other revolutions have been disgraced and collapsed. But whereas in Armenia, it worked, the new leader, Nikol Pashinyan, is still a popular prime minister, initially fired up by the educated middle classes and idealist youth. Mass workers, rural folk, and poor city class workers drawn in at the last minute. The mobilization of the masses was decisive. It was not a worker peasant revolution, but a democratic uprising that led to eventual victory, which is holding very well. So that was a successful uprising by a population that have had enough. Now, same way, there's the Arab uprising, and they call it Arabi Vasante in Sinhala. Talking to somebody recently, having heard this on media, I was saying, well, who is this Arabi Vasante? Who is he? That was the level of understanding. I said, so Vasante is the name of person, that was the spring time of the season, and similar things were tried. It worked in Tunisia to some limited extent, but unfortunately, countries like Egypt, Libya, Algeria, Syria, and Ethiopia, results were not as good. In fact, countries Libya and Syria in particular ended up in a worse state than they were before, leading to a lot of violence and poverty. So that is the situation we are in. The main challenge now is to make sure the country has been extremely patient and moderate. And Sri Lankans are showing that they can think, we act responsibly, and we are, but the struggle isn't over yet. So my wish is, let ours be a velvet revolution like in Armenia, and not an Arab Spring like it happened elsewhere in the Middle East. Now, how do we get out of this morass, this mess we are in? Now, these are 3 thinkers. In fact, rather than going into their full ideas in the presentation, I'll make sure the hyperlinks are there. Therefore, you can click and see the full story. This is by no means comprehensive. There are many other thoughts developing at the moment. What is required is all those thoughts are pulled together, pick the best out, and experiment, work your way through and learn, try out, correct, and adapt. that is the so-called the continuous improvement rather than arriving there straight away. Um, the, right, Sunil Vimla once is an academic, a professor, medical person in the US, written extensively, available in the media, and I'll sort of make sure it's linked to one of his recent articles. And recently, the politician Sri Lanka, Kumara Welgama, made a 7-point suggestion worth considering. And another interesting one that caught my attention was the recent event held at the BMICH Colombo, Forward Together for the Nation event. Number of very good speakers, quite a good debate. And in particular, Harsha De Silva's presentation. The reason I mention it is compared to many, many politicians who seem to be worried about their positions and the petty squabbles, he seemed to have grasped the reality and analyzed it very scientifically to the problem we are in, the steps we need to take immediately, short term, medium term, long term to climb out of the situation, well worth looking at. And my initial thoughts were very briefly, the struggle needs to continue peacefully as it is. At the end, sooner or later, a group of senior respected people like non-executive directors should come together and appoint some key people, as I mentioned last time, to deal with the immediate problems. And part of that is to deal with the economic crisis, as well as get the constitution sorted to hold elections. And when it comes to elections, making sure the systems are modified to rid the country of the things that have caused all this misery over the years. In my opinion, the party political system is not necessary. It just divides the same people one against the another based on some party system. What we need is one country. Again, we need to have the Sri Lanka. We are Sri Lankans. No, there is no need for, I'm a Sinhalese, I'm a Tamil, I'm a Muslim. We are a small country. When you look at the most successful parts of the world, the US, the Australia, the UK, either I'm British or I'm American. I'm not a Sinhalese. It doesn't matter. But it doesn't mean to say I'm going to forget my Sinhala. And when it comes to electing MPs, minimum education requirement, in my opinion, is a degree at least, and a professional demonstrable skills experience to deliver something useful. They should have no criminal record, and they should declare their assets and then do annual returns annually to show how much they earn and where they came from. And they should be performance reviewed and paid decent salaries so that they deliver like professionals, not live like criminals. And this US-style presidential election campaigns that are very, very expensive tend to corrupt the system and prevent talented and honest young people who don't have a lot of money from entering the parliament, who can really make a difference, can't get in because our system is no good. Instead, it encourages mediocre and dishonest candidates funded by corrupt businesses to win and rob the state to pay back their funders. So that is the key thing we need to deal with and root out. And it is my view, the religious people, whatever religion they are, don't need to get into politics and become MPs. They should actually concentrate on practicing their religion, educating, enlightening their followers, and politics is best left to politicians, lay people to manage. There should be absolute zero tolerance when it comes to corruption, and anyone who offends should be made an example of to discourage other people from even trying. Now, Singapore and Rwanda are two countries who have actually achieved this, that we could turn to for some ideas and inspiration. Finally, there is also a lot of talk about the money. I mean, last time I mentioned why there may be a big hesitation by the leaders in power to step down. And currently it's their own personal safety because they have too much to lose, their own personal safety rather than the well-being of the country. So we need to think of ways of encouraging, facilitating, forcing them to step down to make way to give the country a future. Now, ways to recover the money, two things to avoid. I would put, Idi Amin's Uganda. I mentioned last time that he committed abominable crimes, even eating human flesh, but he had a safe passage and lived to a natural death in Saudi Arabia, declaring that he was Muslim. and justice was never done. Those victims never saw justice done. So that is something that we need to avoid as well, impunity. Second one is the 1984 Bhopal disaster that some of you may know, which originally killed 8,000 people. This is the Union Carbide Battery Company and the leak of poisonous gases. And Bhopal, the entire city, was built around Union Carbide. That was the largest employer. And it was due to poor maintenance, bad practices, that disaster happened. And over the years, at least another 8,000 have died over the years through lung disease and after effects of the disaster. It was extremely badly managed. Because of that disaster, the chief executive of the US chief exec of Union Carbide flew in when that happened, but the Indians mismanaged it from the day one, arrested him at the airport, locked him up and humiliated him. And just this way, proper court cases didn't happen. And he was so upset that when he went away, he never followed it up and didn't do anything to help. So the poor people suffered, continued to suffer because the whole thing was mismanaged, all driven by emotion rather than logic and rules of law. So those are two examples. But first, with our situation, we should avoid the lynch mob mentality at this situation. We need to use our head. Now, for examples here, again, a link will be available. A US senator, this is just one example, currently who has got Sri Lankan voters in this area, spearheading a campaign, taking to the Senate to put measures in place for any US-based assets stolen from Sri Lanka to seize and return them. So that may be something worth following up, particularly Sri Lankans based in the US. And there is another link, a petition to British Parliament. This is only open to people who are resident in the UK, to ask the UK government to introduce legislation to seize any assets, illegal assets stolen from Sri Lanka. There's quite a lot of joint action being taken by Sri Lankan lawyers that I'm aware of, but I have no further details available. So one of the key things that is worth, the most official one is what's called the STAR Initiative. There is an article by Dr. Nihal Jayawardena, the link is there. This is actually part of the UN initiative that was put in place a few years ago, very much aimed at those corrupt leaders of countries who rob the countries dry and get their monies into foreign bank accounts, a formal system in place to help those countries to get their money back. Now, it only works when a stable government comes to power and makes a formal request in the appropriate way for the systems to start working. But it's extremely comprehensive because it's led by the UN. It has the support of all the law enforcement agencies of the member countries. So it's quite comprehensive. It takes time, not a cheap initiative, but that is the best way to get it back. So those options are available to the nation when we are ready for it. So one of the key lessons is that when you get to this point, please use the head, be moderate, do not go down the lynch mob approach. That doesn't do the reputation of the country any good, and that will not get back everything that is owed, that gives the space. And the smoke cloud needed for people who have things to hide to make them disappear. I'd like to stop there. Thank you for your attention.
Marvin, thank you so much for elaborating so well and also taking examples from the history, because we do have to learn from the history to avoid trouble as well. So it's good that you brought it up. And also, can I have permission to share your presentation, because the links don't work on the Zoom, so I'll have to send it separately.
Right, there are two of them that I will insert the links and send it to you, then you can share.
Yeah, so then I can send it those separately.
Thank you.
And the audience, is there anybody who wants to ask any questions or make comments? I think those are all valuable. Don't think that that comments are not valuable. Every comment is valuable because you work and ask from a different experience. Yes, Kirti, go on.
Right. I think I thought I'll spend a couple of minutes. First, I'm going to take the symbolic example you took, the sinking ship. This ship is stuck aground, not because the passengers has done anything wrong, but the captain and the crew were drunk, and they were stealing money. So as long as the same captain and the same crew is in charge, ship can never be rescued. So even if the captain is thrown out into the sea, it will take a long time to repair the ship, because that ship has been going all over the place in a drunken way in the last 20, 30, 40, maybe at least 30 years. I don't know. So, and the next point I would like to say is, whatever happens, I think I mentioned it the last time as well, unless we work within the existing constitution, even if it is such a bad constitution, we will get into trouble. So we must try and use the tools, very poor tools available in the constitution. But to make it happen, the people in the parliament must take actions, because they are in the parliament, in the constitution, there is enough space to do something. But it hasn't happened so far because there have been a lot of infighting. But when there is enough pressure from the people, eventually they will take action. So without going into too much detail, I think Mervyn mentioned the petition started to persuade the UK government to take action. I like to make an appeal. We need at least 10,000 signatures. At the moment, I think it's about 3,500, nearly 4,000 signatures. It's only 1 week old, by the way. So it's pretty good going. Could you please, anybody listening to this, ask anybody living in the UK, they don't have to be Sri Lankan, they don't have to know any Sri Lankan people. The British people, I asked several British people to sign, and they have done it. This is about persuading the government, UK government, to take some active provisions or activities to look for the money invested in the UK. It's not a huge amount of money relatively. We know at least 20 billion pounds was stolen from Sri Lanka, but in the UK, it's less than $1 billion. It may be less than 500 million. Even so, it's important. So we have to get as many signatures as possible from the UK residents and UK citizens. So I would simply ask anybody who is listening, please forward it to all your friends, either English or Indian or any nationality. As long as they are living in the UK, they can vote for that. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you, Kirti, for highlighting that need. And I actually received that link from Sri Lankan and then living in Sri Lanka, whether they could see.
Actually, I listened to the last week's discussion also, and including all the discussion, including the Mervin's discussion, all are actually they are analyzing what to show what has happened to Sri Lanka or what has happened to the economy of Sri Lanka. Actually, these are not bad, actually very, very good, but these things have been analyzed earlier also, and there were so many articles in newspapers even before the 2019 election. So actually now, according to the present situation, even today there are so many rallies going on the roads today, and according to this one, there will be no solution immediately, because the president says he is not vacating, and Prime Minister says he is not going. No, he says if somebody wants to chase me, I will chase me. So that's his answer. So no one can chase him, no one can send them home, even though the youth cry. So there will be, according to the present situation, there will be no solution immediately. It will take many years sometimes. And actually, this is, I think this is the fault of our people. The fault they have done in 2019 election. because we have already selected somebody, and the majority of this thing have been 69 lakhs in Sri Lankan language. So many people have voted the Rajpaksa regime, and now they are in power. But I think during the election time, last election 2019, the people, the most of the people knew that these were what do you call that? There were so many court cases going on during the election, before the election, and everybody knew that these rascals were having so many the corruptions made account of the corruptions, and they have stolen so much of money from Sri Lanka, and they have done a lot of corruption. So there were court cases even during 2019. And if somebody, at least the educated people, studied those things that time, they could have never voted this Rajpaksa regime. But unfortunately, I know, even there are my relations who are living in Melbourne and England, they purposely came to Sri Lanka by air to vote Rajpaksa regime. And there somebody met Rajpaksa to show that they are voting him. And actually, that time even, there were so many court cases going on, newspapers reported, media reported those cases against those people. For example, Mervyn was telling money, a lot of money was stolen from the what do you call that, tsunami funds, and the rugger writer was killed, and the best newspaper reporter was killed by Rajpaksa regime, and there were so many cases, right? And even the wonderful thing is the normal village people, as Mervyn was telling, village people don't understand these things. What they say is they just see some gains that they can get from the government. For example, samurdhi allowances or pimpadi or something. There are so many things, gift from the government, or these politicals promised so many things, right? So on promise, the innocent people, village people voted them. But wonderful thing is the uneducated professionals, even who could read Sinhala, both Sinhala, Tamil and English, and knowing these people were rascals, they have voted. So now, of course, even those people who are having rights in gold face, they shout telling that we voted you, but now we want you go, like that. So those are, most of them are educated people. So that's my view actually. So now we are too late to do anything, because these two people, the main people, president, to all Rajpaksa, they will never leave this person. They will remain. So that is my view actually. I don't know whether you followed me. I don't know that.
Yeah, I think you made a very good point. This is because a lot of people did not get involved with politics, or had no interest in politics for a long time. And the voting was just voting. Then after that you forget, and then you carry on for another 5 years and start. One reason is a lot of people did not understand how the government is funded. They never thought that. They thought government was a money tree. You can shake a bit of money from it when you do a protest or something, but they never understood that actually they themselves are paying for it. This is even not understood by anyone, and most of the people. So that is why people don't really respond that much, because they think it doesn't affect them. So I mean, I'll give you one example just to stop there. There was one time where the government budget allocated just over 1% for education, and the university staff were protesting and everything. And then at that time, I happened to speak to one of the vice chancellors of a university, and I told that particular person, I mean, how could you run education with 1% of GDP being allocated for national education? And the vice chancellor asked from me, what is the GDP? What do you mean by GDP? So now you see the level, yeah? Okay, so when people are professionals, they don't really understand the whole way how the country runs. And I can say that is in my own profession, most people don't really understand how the money is generated for public expenses. So this is why we started talking about these things. And now people like you are bringing it to light, which is very good, because then we understand why we should get involved with this political saga. I'll stop there. I don't want to talk too much. And I think Udita was raising the hand. Udita, you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah, I would like to put a bit more meat on that on board, which is the things which is mentioned just now. I personally feel that the current um, Rajapaksa regime, they're in power mainly to hide their crimes. If you go back, if you remember when Sirisena appointed Mahinda Rajapaksa as the prime minister, the first thing they did was to get rid of that Nalaka Silva,
Yeah.
because he was the person who was investigating their crimes. And when Gotabaya Rajapaksa came into power this time, similarly, first thing they did was Nalaka Silva had to leave the country, and um, they demoted Shani Abesekar to a peon. Now that shows that the first thing they did in government. Forget about all the other things the country general country faces. The first thing they did was to get rid of those people. So that is where I think that they are in power for, just to hide their crimes. And Mervyn did mention about the action by the Sri Lankan lawyers. I don't know what action Mervyn was telling about, but one action taken by the Sri Lankan lawyers is to protest to the Attorney General Department for dismissing 70 odd cases against the Rajapaksa regime. So,
yeah.
so again, that shows they are in power mainly to hide the murders, hide the crimes, hide the plundering, right? And that's why they are in power. So, and right through that track record says that they dismissed the previous chief justice. 1,000-page document was produced, analyzed, and decision given overnight to dismiss chief justice overnight. So these are the people we are talking about, and it is sad that people who voted didn't know that they were dismissed in 2015 being plunderers and murderers and things like that, and people simply re-voted them back into power. So I have got no doubt that Gotabaya Rajapaksa wanted presidential immunity for all his crimes, and the only way of avoiding crimes progressing was to come into power, and that is most likely the reason for the Easter massacres also. So again, the track record will say that they are capable of that, and that is exactly what has happened. If today, for example, DB Vijayatunga was in power, we'll say, for example, he didn't have any skeletons in his cupboard. if people were protesting about his leadership, he would have given up and gone into retirement and to live a peaceful retirement. But they cannot do that. They know that once they get given, uh, once they lose power, they will be behind bars for the crimes they have done. So that's why they came into power to hide those, and they're not going to give in, because they know from top, the highest in the land, they can go down to the lowest in the land behind bars. So unless they are forced to go, they will not go. So that's one thing I just want to mention. The other thing is, Mervyn did mention about election spending. I think for all the plundering which happens by the politicians, they start with election spending. I did mention probably last time also, if they have got a legitimate earning of, we'll say, 10 million during 5 years, if they spend 30 million to get into power, they have to find that money anyhow, right? And that's where the plundering comes. In fact, I'm sure many MPs in the parliament, they think that it is their right to do that because they have spent so much to come into power, and in that process they plunder 100 times than what they have earned. So anyhow, anyhow, um, through strict laws and implementing those laws, unless you strictly control election spending, uh, we will see these crooks coming into power who have been supported by drug lords or business, and they had to be repaid back. And if you can uh, have a level playing field with regards to election spending, that will help many professionals to come into take into politics. At the moment, they haven't got any route to financially fight with these crooks. So these are the sort of few things I wanted to mention.
No, I think thank you, Udit, pointing out those issues of these are all basically obstacles. And I think, we don't want to be truly negative and say we can't do anything because as Mervyn mentioned, Armenia Revolution, for example, people's power have overcome the issues. They can do. And that is why we need to keep going with a positive attitude saying, yes, we can make the change. So that's why we are trying to do this. And I'm very grateful that people are putting all these comments. And I have another speaker. Can I introduce Malavi Dissanayaka? Are you there?
Can you see the screen, Tula?
We can see the screen. If you put it in the PowerPoint
Yeah. Okay.
display mode, it will come up a bit better, I think.
Okay. Yeah. I will quickly go through these few slides, and this kind of also in line with today's presentation by Mervyn. Okay, I'm focusing on a little bit of this background to this. So these are the youths playing the major role in this struggle. It's symbolized by the statement, "Gotta go home." And also on frequently you hear that they want a system change, not only the personalities, a system change, which I think includes the constitution and other many other aspects of the existing regime. Now this current youth uprising is different to the three youth uprisings that we experienced in 1971, 88, 89, and also the conflict, North conflict with the LTT. So these are different one. These are unarmed struggle. Now, let's go a little bit into the background of this kind of revolutions. It started in the recent history with the French Revolution. It was a largely unarmed struggle. It's an ideology in the ideology platform, and people were able to expel the rulers at that time and change, devise a new constitution. And so that's how the French Revolution took place. Then, as Mervyn also stated, the Arab Spring in the 2010, 11, 12 period, many Arab countries went through this kind of wave. But as he quite correctly mentioned, it ended up with mixed results. It was not 100% peaceful. In some countries, there was some many deaths, but overall, in about 6 countries out of about 11 or 12, the people were able to change the regime, change the system. And Arab Spring, the reasons behind was the poverty, a large percentage of educated youth unemployed and dissatisfied with the population, with the regime. Is a little different to our system. It was a monarchy. There was hardly any parliamentary elections in most of those countries. Human rights violations, political corruption, economic decline, unemployment. So there was a little bit different kind of yeah. Now, okay, these are the summary of Tunisia, Algeria, Jordan. You can see in some countries there were many deaths. Tunisia.
Lakshman, I think your viewpoints are still in the not in the presentation mode.
Oh, I see. Just a minute. Yeah.
Okay, now I can see that bit, but you can still press on the right hand at the bottom. There is a presentation symbol.
Yeah,
the number 4. Yeah.
Is it okay? Is it okay?
It still hasn't done that, but
yeah, I'm in the presentation mode. Let's see.
The fourth one at the bottom line, the 4th symbol. Double click on that one and see what happens.
Yeah, just a minute. Yeah. Let's see.
I think your arrow was there a few seconds ago.
Yeah.
Not that.
No.
That's the one.
Yeah, but still you can't see.
Not that one. Yeah. Count number 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right.
Okay.
That's better.
Yeah.
Can you see the full screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see it now. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we go ahead. So let's see. I said the Arab Spring is not 100% peaceful exercise. There were some deaths, and then Kuwait 0 deaths, like that. So it was a mixed thing. But the important point is that the social media played a major role in these recent uprisings. So what is happening in Sri Lanka right now is that the social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and thanks to the digital age, so the youth has a very fast way of communication compared to the traditional ways that we have been used to in the past. So it's a new way of youth uprising, unarmed so far. And so there is a unique feature. And in Sri Lanka, I think the percentage of youth is close to 30% in the age category 20 to 30 years, 35 years. So it's the social media which is the main weapon in the present youth uprising. So Facebook plays a major role, Twitter and YouTube. And lessons from the Arab Spring is out of about 11 countries, I think 6 countries, government was fully replaced by new regimes. And also others, there were significant changes in the other systems. And Myanmar is another latest example. But last week I heard that the Prime Minister was arrested again by the military. So we have to focus this current crisis in Sri Lanka with this one. Now many speakers today, I think several speakers, Abe, Udita and Kirti also mentioned how to go from here. Now it's a big question, as several speakers mentioned. President is not going to resign, and the Prime Minister is not going to resign. And as quite correctly mentioned by Udita, that is the main reason, because they have many things to hide, and they know if they resign, where they are going to end up with. So the main problem is how to change this political, at least the interim administration, because all the parties are not coming into the same platform. So immediate problem is how to get into the same table and come out with a solution for an interim administration. Then the interim administration will formulate a new constitution and have elections or whatever. But I am not quite agree with Kirti. The same kind of similar, maybe little input with new faces, but the same thing will repeat. Unless you change the constitution outside the parliament, somebody else should do it, not these people. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. We need to change. We have to get there one way or the other, but it can be done by educating people as much as possible, so people understand why it needs to be changed, etc., etc. So we can get there. I'm not thinking we should give up at all. I think we should keep our efforts, and we will succeed if we get positive. So I think Kirti raised the hand, and then Dhandas is also on the line to raise the hand as well.
Okay, yes, thank you very much indeed. Now, of course, there were some very important points highlighted in the discussion today. I like to highlight a few issues. Now, we talked about Arab Spring, we talked about Armenia, we didn't mention Indonesia, or we didn't mention the Philippines. There were uprising and they are very successful, and there are very stable governments in those places. What happened in the Arab Spring was that, yes, there was an uprising. However, there were external influences as well. So they were not 100% people's uprising. I think that's why, because the people are not involved, the regime changed, but not the system changed, because the culture was the same. Culture has not been changed. For any system to change, the culture has to change. Now in Sri Lanka, fortunately, the youth, because of the social media, they are more knowledgeable, they can communicate quickly. And I believe as a result, the youth have a slightly different culture. They are prepared to work with other races. They don't think about the ethnic boundaries. Whereas the older generation in Sri Lanka, all they had to mention was Sinhala Buddhists, we are being threatened. They will say yes, 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 sadhu, sadhu, and go vote the you know whom. so the social media, quick communications, and the cultural changes is helpful in Sri Lanka. And the people's uprising without any partisan recommendations. Even so, if we are not careful, it could lead to anarchy. So the system has to change gradually. It's going to take time. Whatever we do is going to take time. Only the parliament has the power to remove the president. Whether they will do it or not, I don't know. Eventually something will happen, but the constitution needs to be changed. We all agree with that, but the constitution change must come from the people through the parliament. It is a very slow process. It's not going to happen in a hurry. In any case, if we are changing to a new constitution, we must spend a lot of time, discuss details. We should not impose a constitution on people. It has to come from the people, with leadership given by the educated people. Now, for example, in South Africa, they had a constitutional council. I think, I can't remember exactly how many, about 500 people. They spent weeks and weeks and weeks debating before they agreed, before they got into the last ruler in South Africa a couple of years ago. So anything is possible. We have to think very carefully. Educated people need to provide the leadership. And we must guide and help the young people to come to the right decision. We have to follow, we must have a clear vision. We must highlight the values we need to develop. We must have policies, must have strategies and plans. We cannot just achieve things in 2 seconds. So vision, values, policies, strategies, and plans are essential. So the young people, they are very energetic. They may not have the plans at the moment. They may have some ideas. So we need to guide them to develop that policies and the plans and carefully considered constitutional reforms eventually through the parliament. Thank you very much indeed.
It's
You are on mute.
Yeah, I am. Sorry.
Chula, can I
Yeah,
speak?
please. I think I was on mute, so you didn't
Right.
hear me.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. It's very clear. People are asking for a system change. What they want is from a current corrupt system to go for an uncorrupt, clean system. Now it has been 1 month. Nothing is moving towards that. And what I hear is everything should be done within the current constitution. Why is that? These people have been working within the current constitution. In the current constitution, it didn't say that. It didn't ask them to steal public money. So it was not written in the constitution. So when we want to change the system, why do you need to stick to that? As Lakshman says, what the new constitution should be, it shouldn't come from these people, from this parliament, it should come from outside. I don't know how it comes. It will never happen from these people. It has to come from outside. I don't know how it happens.
This is my main point.
Exactly.
So now that's exactly what they were doing in Iraq and Libya. They came from outside. Look where we have got to. Is that what we want in Sri Lanka? So it has to be a gradual change. I'll tell you what you can do if you can make it happen. In the current parliament, the opposition says they got 115 votes now. So they can now demand that the president, dissolve the parliament and close elections, call elections. Either they don't have to wait for another 1 year, 1.5 years. So, or the speaker has enough power. Of course, speaker wouldn't do that because the speaker is in Rajapaksa's pockets. But if the opposition now has enough seats, they can, within the current constitution, they can ask for a parliament to be dissolved. So if there are new elections, right, I'm sure there'll be lots of young people, lots of new, so it is still within the current constitution. When the new parliament comes in with a lot of young people, a lot of new MPs, most of the old ones won't be there. So then they can go for a 2/3 majority and change the constitution and involve lots of educated people. Otherwise, I'll tell you, I'll promise you, that's exactly what happened in Iraq, Libya, Onilos, Ethiopia. Countries were ruined completely because they they completely disregarded the existing rules. That doesn't work. That's my word.
Yes, yeah, sorry. But in those countries you mentioned, there were very strong external forces acting.
But in our country, although nobody is talking about it, there are external forces from a different place.
Yeah, but not very visible, but yes, they are there. But whatever it's, I think external committee or external assembly should draft the constitution and ask the lawmakers to approve it.
Yeah. So I mean,
in fact, I'll make a suggestion, not because it's going to work. I'll make a suggestion. Now, Victor Ivan has already proposed this, I believe. He has proposed that, okay, let the 225 be there, temporarily form a constitutional council of about 500 members, 225 from the parliament, but 375 from the educated people from every nation, every race, every ethical group.
Good idea.
Like they did in South Africa.
Yeah.
And they then come up with the new constitution and put it to the parliament then, and then call a referendum. So that way, we are still working with this current constitution. We are still working with the people. We are getting ideas from people. Then we'll have a new constitution.
Yeah, might take a little
Taiwan
longer.
has proposed this.
Not necessarily, but I don't know. I think I tend to agree with what Kirti suggests and also what others are doing. We have to avoid violence at whatever the means, because otherwise people will hijack it and then we will go in a wrong pathway. And the constitution has to be approved by a referendum by people. So 2/3 majority doesn't matter in the future when they want to change it. That's one good thing. But constitution can be a small one, not a very 100, 200, 300 pages, and just identify the values we want to support. And then the whole thing has to change according to what the people want. So I don't think we should underestimate the people's power. And as we discussed now today, there's a major need for regime change. That's the main topic. There is a need for regime change, and what follows may depend on many other factors as well. But still, it looks like there's a crucial obstacle that we have to overcome. So I'm suggesting that, is there people who can talk about this next Sunday, for example, and take some examples from the past, take the current situation, because we are a Sri Lankan and we are a Sri Lankan culture. So we need to take into the cultural points as to how this can be done in Sri Lanka using what we heard today as to why Sri Lankans were not involving in the past. So is it possible? I don't know. Maybe other ideas from you all as well.
Can I talk to her?
Yeah.
Actually, recently there are some suggestions, not by the public, by the government, to the cut off the functions. There are so many functions because Sri Lanka is a function mania country. Anything is completed with the function. And recently, 2 days ago, the government decided to cut off the unnecessary functions, opening, celebration, so many things. That's very good. So public also, I think they like that. There are so many examples. For example, after the 2004 tsunami, every 26th of December, there is a commemoration function. It is really a wastage of money, because one time when I was in the Department of Meteorology, I had to organize this one. So I had to make the budget. It was so many millions of rupees spent for the functions, commemoration function of the people who died in the tsunami. Ultimately, what happened was the politicians flew to Galle by air, by helicopters, and there was a very good lunch given for those people. And ultimately, there were so many things, unnecessary things, and those people who were affected were not given any cent. But we had to spend so much of money. Then, of course, those things also, as Keith was mentioning, the cultural things also, we have to think, if we are going to change the constitution, there are a lot of changes to be done in cultural activities of Sri Lanka. So in this case, of course, after that year, because I saw that there was so much of money was spent unnecessarily, then of course every year I wrote to the current president to stop these functions. But only 1 year, I think in 2016, I wrote a strong letter and handed over that to that time president, Maithripala Sirisena. Then of course he couldn't oppose it. He sent the letter to the disaster management center, and all the functions were stopped, and so many millions of rupees were saved. So those things also, actually, I tried it myself. Actually, like that, every people, especially educated people, have to think about these things. Not only change in the constitution, there are so many cultural things happening in Sri Lanka where a lot of money is wasted, just wasted. There are so many examples. I'm not telling them because somebody might think that I am extremist and I am against religious things and all. But there are so many cultural things which have to be controlled by ourselves and by the government. Thank you. Actually, those people who are living in UK and USA, they know that there are no this foolish function every day. I don't have to explain this to people who are living in UK, USA, Japan, and those countries, Australia also. Okay, thank you very much.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the functions were actually huge hole in the corruption. So it was a corruption hole if you see the bucket that I showed. Yeah. Because I know the government had lots of functions. Remember, various exhibitions, Ganguda, various other things, lots of functions. And one of the bank managers told me that the estimates that you have for these functions are about 3 times more than what the actual expense. And so the contractors get the money, and maybe 1/3 or 2/3 of that money get immediately shunted back to the politicians who approved it. So that is how the functions work. And it was a huge hole in the way they funded their supporters. So you're absolutely right in mentioning about these functions and how it actually corrupted the public money. So that's correct. Yeah, that is true. Yeah. Is it possible for us to take up a discussion next time? It doesn't matter whether it's Sinhalese or English or Tamil, who can express themselves very well. I mean, Ratnayake, do you want to take up a lead and then try to do this regime change thing?
No, you carry on, so we'll support. Just have the topic, any topic like that. So we'll. I have.
So shall we talk it something like a non-violent regime change?
That's right. Yeah. It will be okay, right?
Yeah, and then I mean, anybody who can speak in Sinhalese, it doesn't matter. Or in Tamil, I mean, if somebody can translate, that will be better as well. So shall we do that? If that's what do others say?
What is Kirti's idea?
I think Kirti can do it next Sunday. Or that may.
Just regime change. You talk about a little bit about it. There'll be discussion as well. And I think Ratnayake Abhisinga will be able to bring some other speakers if possible and discuss about it as well. because that's a major issue that is there in front of us at the moment.
I can prepare something about, because in my view, it's not an easy thing, but it's a possible thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's about thinking, it's about changing the thinking patterns and the culture, and then eventually make it happen in the country.
That is good. So that is good to take your point of view. And then, is there anybody else who can bring, even somebody who will talk in Sinhalese? Maybe it doesn't matter. Ratnagar, do you think someone who can talk from Sri Lanka about this?
Yes, I
Mervin,
can try
what do
my
you think?
best.
In fact,
Yeah.
there are a couple of head teachers that I work with in Sri Lanka because of the scholarship scheme, quite
Yeah.
dedicated, sincere people who are quite articulate. Maybe they have the confidence to speak now. In the past, they had to say a lot of things hush hush because of the fears.
Yeah.
I can ask them. I'll see how they
Yeah,
feel.
please,
I don't want to
please, because
compromise
then
them.
we can put some document together in a very small one, not very big ones, and then
Okay.
summarize how should we do this. So these things go across.
Yeah,
So,
I'll ask them
yeah,
and get back to if they agree. Yeah.
yeah. And Mervin, you raised the hands as well.
I was actually responding to what Ratnaik said earlier.
Yeah.
When you think of what example of tsunami, where so many people died, it is only right that we remember it in a respectful manner to show our respect to the dead. It doesn't mean to say that you have to go to a tourist hotel and wine and dine, fly in helicopters, and you don't need politicians. That could happen in their local village, among the families, like almsgiving, including temples, churches. So I think, Chula, you explained very well, saying that was another smoke screen to fiddle money, building budgets into it. So I understood what was going on there. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay. So I think we're nearly coming to nearly 2 hours now. So
I think
yeah,
there's
so
Udita raising
Udit
hand.
is there.
Udita again? Did I see?
Yeah, hi.
Yeah.
I think the issue of tsunami was mentioned. I need to say that you know a rich person will not steal from a beggar. If a rich person steals from a beggar, you feel you need to realize that there's some problem with the rich person. And what Mahinda Rajapaksa did for tsunami funds was much worse than that. He stole money which was given to people with with melting hearts all over the world. They gave money to people who lost everything. They were worse than beggars.
Yeah.
And he went and um, used that money for his purpose. So it is more than a rich person stealing a beggar. He was worse than that. And this is what I want to just mention about tsunami. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, tsunami, I was there and I was trying to help in a medical way. And I know exactly what was happening at that time. It's a really sad situation. And I was in the university
And
and
these
we
were
were,
the leaders we voted for, and no wonder we are in this situation now. I mean, if a person like that can be called a leader,
Yeah.
I think there's a problem with the
Country.
electorate. We are in this situation because that is the level of leadership we have had in the country. I mean, the same man, for example, he it all comes to the judgment. He appointed a man who tied another man to a tree. So
Yeah.
I'm talking about Mervyn Silva. He
Indeed.
appointed him as the Minister of Public Relations. Now we need to realize, can that decision could be taken even by a mentally subnormal person? That is the level of the judgment of the so-called leadership the country has had. No wonder we are suffering today. I mean, can anyone think a reason why a man who has tied another man to a tree should be given the Minister of Public Relations? Now, either he doesn't understand the meaning of these words, right? And that is the level of the judgment of the leadership. So yeah.
It's actually very
Udita,
shrewd and purposeful rather than being ignorant. So this is why I'm thinking certain actions were actually very much purposeful. So it doesn't matter. So I think you all are contributing in the smallest possible way or maybe big possible way to the issue. So we are getting somewhere. And all these things will be relevant for people who are working in the front line or in the other way. So I think, you're bringing out a lot of good information and also information from the world where Sri Lankans are not aware of, for example, the Armenian revolution, how it worked and how the Arab Spring went down and went up for some countries, went down for some countries and so on. So it's all very good. So I think we should need to continue, and I'll focus on the regime change next time. And then if possible, if you all are talking, just send me the email saying that you would speak. And even if there are external guests, speak in Sinhala, that's fine. Speak in Tamil, that's fine, because that will all bring information to others. Yeah, any other comments? Anybody else? Anybody else wants to talk there? So let's hope for the best and be positive. We can achieve something. And in another way, I would say I've been an intensivist for a long time, and I always believe that the lives can be saved when everybody else said it's impossible. So it was done and can be done. So that is the way I look at it. So yes, we can do it. We can do a small system change and get there. And particularly we hear non-violence is so important. And I think that needs to be promoted. Yeah. Anything else? If there's nothing else, we can conclude now.
Material we are gathering, I believe, will, even in a small way, serve as a reference library for people in a.
Yeah, that's right. So it will get there. So I mean, just like the mobile phones came up in 1960s, it took up in 1980s. So somebody will realize the importance of these things, and then we'll take that. So we should not really give up. Let's take it forward, and we'll take maybe historical things, evidence, etc., about non-violent means of regime change for better. Shall we do that next time?
Chula, one suggestion. This is, just a thought that we who are taking part in this, when we send our emails out to our personal contacts, if you can embed the hyperlink to this library with the one line what it is, to give it more publicity, a lot more Sri Lankans will get to hear about it and use it.
Yeah, great. I mean, you're telling about, say I have not put Facebook links and Instagram links yet to all what we're doing. I mean, if you can advise me on that, that will be great as well. I'll try to get this going. Yeah, that way. Yeah, true.
Bottom of our email signatures. If you can put that.
I try to keep all the emails hidden. The main reason is I don't want people to use it in a different way. So because of that, always the communications will be undisclosed to recipients. So I will maintain that for safety. It's better to be on a safe side rather than other way around.
Okay.
So that's fine. Yeah. Okay, thank you all for joining us. Be positive. We can make the change. We've learned a lot of things out of these discussions. And once again, be positive. We'll meet again next Sunday, seeing how to change the regime non-violently. Great. Thank you all.
Good night here. I think good evening in your country.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Bye.
Kitty, good night.
Good night. No,
Bye.
good afternoon to us. Yeah.
Right. Professor? Right. Okay, Chula, right.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye. Right.
Bye.
Dr. Dharmi, right.
Bye.